Okay, so let's see the difference between these two models. So ISO OSI reference model and TCP IP, both are actually called reference models because actually you cannot see, so physically you cannot see these properties in different layers. But in order to understand the concept, we are dividing this to multiple layers. The bottom layer is physical layer, that is where data is sent in binary format. Then you have the frame, so frame-based layer. So this frame-based layer is basically data link layer. This is where the network cards, network interface card works here, NIC, and the MAC address works here, and logical link control is LLC is working here. MAC address and basically MAC address and so you have to remember these two things: MAC address and Ethernet. Ethernet, that means NIC, network interface cards, are working in this layer. So their duty is in so wires. So basically copper wires, fiber optics, and wireless media such as Wi-Fi, right? Copper wires, fiber optics, wireless media like Wi-Fi. Those are working in the bottom layer. Those are working in the bottom layer. So this is one binaries are going through these fiber optic lines, copper lines, Wi-Fi lines, and all. So then in the next layer, so as I said, it is for the network cards. So sending frames. Frame means actually a chunk of data. Data wala kotasa, not entire data. Data you be divided to manageable chunks. Basically, those are called packets. But packets are in the network layer. Packets kila kiyana me network layer ekේ වැඩ කරන්නේ. So this the bottom layer or the data link layer we call frames. In network layer, frames are exchanging between network machines. Then, so after finding the MAC address, that is the physical address, actually, so then you can see less amount of data in the network layer. Less amount of data in the network layer. So you don't have any MAC addresses and all, but you have IP addresses. So IP address is exposed in this layer. This is where IP config like commands and TCP, transmission control protocol, IP internet protocol, and mainly TCP is revealed in this layer, transport layer. The transmission control transport layer, and the session layer is like it's the layer which handshake and create a session between two computers. And the presentation and application layer, we learned that last day. So in presentation and application layer, basically application layer protocols are working, and data representation, encryption, compression, those are working in the top layer. Okay, so then let's write about, so I asked you to find information about the other layers. I'm not sure whether you have found. If you found, you can share with me. Okay, let's go to the next bottom layer, that is session. Session layer. Session layer. And this layer creates authenticated session after establishment of a session. Data related to particular session is exchanged. Some sessions are having session key for security. With these components are enough. In the session layer, basically you have so similar session related data. In the session layer, you have session related data. Okay, this is something like our Zoom meeting. Our Zoom meeting, it's like a session. We start session by 6 p.m. typically. We start our session by 6 p.m. and then we continue our session. Actually, we continue as 2 sessions. The first session, so due to the Zoom time limitation, first session we are going to finish within 40 minutes. Then we start the second session. Then we continue to transfer data. And you know, the first session and the second session. So anyway, both sessions, you need link to connect. That link contains username and password, user ID, and a passcode. එතකොට Zoom meeting එක යන විදිහ හිතන්න Zoom meeting එක user ID එකයි passcode එකයි ගහලා අපි session එකක් හදාගන්න. ඊට පස්සේ ආයේ මැද්දේදී ඕන වෙන්නේ නෑ user ID එක passcode. You don't need it in the middle, right? So but at the end, after termination, again you need, if you need to join this session, so then you need the username and password. The feature of session layer, you can say, the sessions are for limited time. Sessions are expiring, right? Sessions are for, so there are not like forever sessions. Sessions are for a limited time. Sessions are for a limited time. Okay, this week's schedule, we don't have any change, but next week onward, as I said, there will be change and I will send you that, right? So that's why I said, I thought that you will be joining using the same link, and since you are not joined, that's why I have resend the asked. So with regard to resend the session, resend the username and password with the link. I thought you will be joining with the same link, but so you were waiting for the links, right? It's okay. Right, okay, session is for a limited time. So for an example, this Zoom session will be ended within 40 minutes. That is Zoom limitation. And anyway, after login, so even Gmail also, so it's asking whether to remember the session. If you tick remember session, then only it keep in the login. Otherwise, it is automatically asking you the password saying session expired. So banks and all, they are having sessions, right? When you log into the bank account, so there's a session, there's a limited time. After that, session expired. After the expiration, you have to rejoin by creating a new session. So why sessions are having limited time? Why sessions are having limited time? Yes? Any reason? Why you think that sessions are having limited time? Why cannot a session last forever? Why session cannot last forever? Why it is limited? Any reason? Yes? What do you think? So that means you have not checked this, right? ඔයාලා බලවන ඕන කියන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. ඇයි sessions වල limited time එකක් තියෙන්නේ? ඇයි bank එකක login session එකක් ඉක්මනින් expire වෙන්නේ? ඇයි සමහර sessions දවසින් expire වෙන්නේ? මොකක් හරි reason එකක් තියෙනවද? හිතලා කියන්න පුළුවන්. නැතුලි? Can you think and tell me the answer? Is there any reason for such thing? Yes? Sit me. Okay, so I think I did wrong thing by asking a question, right? So please excuse me for that. Why sessions are having limited time? Because so sessions are with protected keys, usernames and passwords. If you keep going the same session, if you keep preserving the same session forever, then so one thing is it will in order to make room for any other session, you have to terminate sessions. Anik sessions වලට ඉඩ දෙන්න sessions terminate කරන්න වෙනවා. එක එක හේතුවක්. And the second reason is the most important one, for the security purpose. So if you are like, so okay, let's say if you are allowed to use this session forever, then so there might be some other people trying to steal session credentials. That is called session hijacking. They are trying to take the session keys session cookies and session related data and try to establish the same session. So by actually removing you from the original session. Session hijacking. Please check what is session hijacking. That is attack. Session hijacking. Session hijacking means session hijacking. Session hijacking means, so when a user is authenticated, when some user is authenticated, he is given a session. Here, you can see this victim. Okay, so victim login with the username and password. And now after login, he can, so he is given a session ID. He is given a session ID. So what attacker is doing, attacker is getting the session ID, and by sending the session ID, attacker is showing that attacker is the authenticated user. And then the session will be established between the server and the attacker. Session will be established between the server and the attack. And here, this is another picture. Victim and web server having a session. You log to the particular website. Let's say you have logged into the Facebook. And another person in your network trying to steal your session ID, try to sniff or try to get your session ID secretly. And after getting the session ID, so he or the attacker is showing, hey, I am the user, I am the Facebook user, not that victim. So gradually you remove the victim and connect using the victim's Facebook session. So that was possible in earlier days. The session hijacking attack was there, but nowadays it's like, it's not much, but still there are possibility to hijack sessions by stealing the session keys. That's why sessions are for limited time. So even hijacked, so what will happen? Even hijacked, the attacker will be disconnected soon. So let's say this is a banking transaction session. So attacker hijacked the banking session and attacker trying to do some transaction. So while doing some transaction, so the session expires, then attacker need to log in again. But attacker don't know the username and password. So attacker must wait until the victim log in again. So similar to this, there's an attack. And similar to this, there's an attack in Wi-Fi for WPA2 security. So the Wi-Fi keys that we are sharing. Right? See, this is not session hijacking, but something similar to that. When we log into Wi-Fi, we connect using a username and password. That is Wi-Fi ID, Wi-Fi SSID, that is the broadcasting ID, and we use a password to connect Wi-Fi. So there's an attack in Wi-Fi. So an attacker can send a negative acknowledgement. Negative acknowledgement can mata log වෙන්න බැරි වුණා කියන message එකක් කරනවා. Negative acknowledgement, or sometimes it's like disconnection request. Negative acknowledgement කියන්නේ disconnect කරනවා වගේ. දැන් Wi-Fi මෙතන අපිට click කරලා disconnect කරන්න පුළුවන්. මේක disconnect කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් ඒ වගේ එකක් බාහිරින් යවන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් මේ මගේ Wi-Fi connection එක තියෙන්නේ මමයි මගේ SLT router එකයි අතරයි. මමයි මගේ SLT router එකයි අතරයි. දැන් මම SLT router එකට message එකක් යවුවොත් මේ මම මේ දසුන් මට මේ disconnect වෙන්න ඕන කියලා SLT router එක මම disconnect කරනවා. ඒ වගේ there's a possibility, right? ඒක possibility එකක් තියෙනවා. network card එකක් පාවිච්චි කරලා message එකක් යවන්න අපේ Wi-Fi router එකට බොරුවට මම වගේ message එකක් යවන්න පුළුවන් මේ මට දැන් disconnect වෙන්න ඕන කියලා. එතකොට මාව disconnect වෙනවා. disconnect වෙනකොට මම මොකද කරන්නේ? මම ආයෙ connect වෙන්න try කරනවා. මේ මාව disconnect වුණොත් මම ආයෙ connect වෙනවානේ Wi-Fi එකට. ඒ connect වෙනකම් බලන් ඉඳලා, so that attacker is stealing our authentication tokens, authentication keys. Attacker tries to steal මොකද දැනට authenticate වෙලා ඉන්නේ. දැන් password එක ගන්න විදිහක් නෑ. මොකද දැන් network එකේ password යන්නේ නෑ. attacker බලන් ඉන්නවා. attacker බලන් ඉඳලා කියනවා මට disconnect වෙන්න ඕන කියලා. එතකොට server එක මෙයාව disconnect කරනවා. victim ව disconnect කරනවා. disconnect කරනවා victim බලන්න ඕනේ. මම එහෙම එකක් කිව්වේ නෑ. මට connect වෙන්න ඕනේ කියලා ආයෙ log වෙනවා. ආයෙ log වෙනකොටම attacker බලන් ඉඳලා මේ key එක හොරකම් කරනවා. ඒ key එක එයා හොරකම් කළා. එයා යවනවා මේ මට log වෙන්න ඕනේ. Now attacker stopping the victim and acting as the victim and sending the authentication token to the web server. Then web server can authenticate you. So the web server can authenticate attacker instead of you. Anyway, sessions කියන්නේ ඔය වගේ වල sessions කියන්නේ server එක සහ client අතර ගනුදෙනු කරන්න තියෙන එක්තරා කාල පරාසයක්. සහ ඒකෙදි භාවිතා කරන නීති රීති ටික. එහෙම එකක් හදා ගැනීම තමයි session එකක් කියන්නේ. එතකොට session layer එකේ ප්‍රධානම duty එක තමයි creating sessions. Understood? If you cannot understand, please let me know, then I can repeat. Did you understand or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, only few are responding, right? Others are not responding. But okay, now you know what is the duty of session layer. So the next layer is transport layer. Please write down next layer, transport layer. So in transport layer, basically TCP. TCP is the leader and UDP is also working. These protocols are the leaders in transport layer. So it's handling the transport. The feature of this layer is handling sorry, it's not to be included here. TCP, UDP, handling transportation of packets. Right. So this has acknowledgements, handling acknowledgements, negative acknowledgements, packet resend request, etc. Is handling acknowledgements, negative acknowledgements, and packet resend request. In case of damage, you can ask to resend the packets. So those things are handling transport layer. Basically TCP, IP, and here you can see packets. And the next one is internet layer or network layer here. Network layer in internet model we call internet layer. So basically IP works here. Packet switching is the main role. Packet switching means dividing data into packets and sending into addresses. Packet switching and addressing. Those are the main duties of this layer. Packet hadala meya තමයි යවන්නේ. After the network layer, you have the next layer, that is data link layer. Frames, Ethernet, network, identification, network identity cards, works here. And data format is frames. In network layer also, here it is packet, right? So here we can call data stream. Packets and frames. Frames and Ethernet is one of the main topologies of the protocols. Then the physical layer. Here the flow control and error control. Physical or the MAC addresses work in here. Physical or MAC addresses are working here. And here actually bits, you have bits. And so protocols like error control and flow control protocol. Such as CRC, cyclic redundancy check. You don't have that, so don't worry. CRC, those are working in this level. That is actually bits, bit level errors, burst level errors. Bit level errors and burst errors are detected and corrected for resends. Mostly it's resends, right? Because correction is difficult. Correction will take time. So if data damage, you have to discard the packet and resend it. So that is the easiest way. If data damage, discard the packet and resend it. That is the easiest way. Okay, do you have any question to ask related to these layers? මොනහරි තියෙනවා නම් මේකට අදාළ questions අහන්න ඉක්මනින් අහන්න. So don't take much time, do it quickly. So anything related to this? Anything related to these layers? ISO OSI, International Standardization Organization, Open System Interconnect. International Standardization Organization, Open System Interconnect reference model. Do you have any doubts on this, or shall I proceed to the next one? I hope you are still writing. If you are done, please let me know. If you are finished writing, please let me know. Hello. Level ICT papers, they are testing your dynamic skills. So if you like buy hard and go for the exam, exam. So you think you wrote the correct answers after coming and checking the examiner's reviews or the answer sheets or the so whatever the marking scheme, you will understand that that is not the answer. That is the nature of the examination. Most of the students they feeling that is easy paper. But after write the paper and come back, if you check with that marking scheme, or if you get the result of the examination, then only you realize that is not easy. That is not easy as we thought. That was tricky. Right? But it is not actually, it's tricky. I'm not telling it's difficult, it's tricky. Right? So tricky කියනවා උත්තර ලියලා ගියාම හරියනවා. Right? Tricky කියනවා පොඩ්ඩ රවට්ටලා උත්තරේ වෙනේම ගන්න බලන්න. So you have to write the correct answer without trusting the guy who had created the paper. Okay, so let's move to the next one. And next, actually, so we learn about the compression formats and image formats, also these things. And so what are the basic differences between these two layers? Let's use an image to compare. So TCP IP layer has all the features in the application layer, presentation layer, session layer in single application layer. Then make TCP IP protocol layer lazy. Because all three layers together, application, presentation, session layer together, create the TCP IP application. And transport layer is transport layer, network layer is internet layer, and data link physical layer together is network access layer. Okay, shall we write down the heading TCP IP versus OSI model? Please write down the heading TCP IP model was ISO OSI model. Then please draw this diagram and show the mapping. This is important. This might be there in the examination. TCP IP and ISO OSI. So please draw this diagram quickly. Do a comparison of these two layers. If in your examination, if you get a question to compare TCP IP layer versus OSI model, TCP IP model was OSI model. Simply you have to merge the things. So you have to only remember OSI is a model. Application layer is responsible for various applications such as web, email, remote access. Those are the responsibilities of application layer. And presentation layer is basically handling file types, file compression, file types, file formatting, file encoding, decoding, encryption, and all. Session layer is actually maintaining sessions related to SQL sessions, NetBIOS sessions. So that is how, like, when you log in, SQL session is created and server session is created. When you log in with the server session is created. So all these things are happening in the application layer in TCP IP model. So that is the comparison. All these three layers, all these things are happening in the TCP IP application layer. But for OSI layer, you have three things. Transport layer, so no significant difference in the transport layer, but you can say, so both TCP UDP based transportation happens here. Network layer is the IP based layer. The internet protocol works here. So basically packet switching or the packets are transferred here. In the network access layer, this is where the flow control, error control happens. Flow control means how bits are synced. Error control means how to find bit errors and burst errors. Bit errors means bit errors. If bits here and there, if you miss some bits, those are called bit errors. Burst errors means continuously some bits are missing. It is difficult to find correct burst errors, but it is easy to correct bit errors. Ek bit error ekak correct karana lazy, but burst error ekak nang amaruයි. In case of burst error ekak nang inne, we will resend the data without correcting that, because correcting is difficult. So resending is easy. So all these are handled in the network layer or data link and physical layer. So this is network access layer in the TCP model. Okay, you can see the similarities. Both are layered architecture. The layers models are compared with each other. The physical layer, data link layer, OSI models correspond to the link layer of TCP model. So that is given. And also the network layer and the transport layers are same. So what are the same layers? So that is, those are the similarities, right? Similar layers. Both models divided into packets, and so packet transmission is happens, right? And in the OSI model, generic model is based upon the functionalities of each layer. TCP P model is protocol oriented, because that's why when you ask protocols separately for presentation layer, session layer, it's quite difficult to tell. Right? You ask that, it's quite difficult to tell for this layer. But if you take TCP IP model, it's easy to tell, right? Application layer, because HTTP, all these are falling into same. But separately application layer protocol, presentation layer protocol, session layer protocol, it's quite difficult to tell like that. But if you take a single layer, so now it's protocol based. Transport layer, directly you have TCP. Internet layer, IP. So this has Ethernet. It's easy to tell based on the protocols. So that is actually in TCP IP model. And OSI model distinguishes three concepts, namely services, interfaces, and protocols. Right? It has services, interfaces,